This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month. So Russ, 10 years after David Berkowitz terrorized the Bronx, there was another serial killer. He preyed on the youth. And this guy has been in jail now for 28 years, and he maintains his innocence. He claims that he had nothing to do with this. I'm curious what Russ the Profiler has to say. This is the case of Alejandro Henriquez. Hi, welcome back to Wife of Crime, guys. This is Jess, weekly true crime podcast where I tell Russ all my favorite true crime stories and he reacts to them.
Thanks for letting me be here.
So this week, I'm telling you the story of a Bronx serial killer. Another one.
It's not me.
Obvi. So we know David Berkowitz, a.k.a. Son of Sam.
What was his name? Like Little Turd?
No,
I forgot what we
Son
called
of
him.
Sam. I just said a.k.a. Son of Sam.
No, I renamed him. Son of
Oh,
Turd.
yeah, you renamed him the Little Turd. That's true.
Turd Sandwich.
So he terrorized the Bronx in the 70s. So now I'm going to talk about a very little known serial killer. He's actually a suspected serial killer because he maintains his innocence. He's been in jail for 28 years.
But he's convicted, so I'm not sure if that's suspected.
No, he's suspected of being a serial killer. He's been convicted on for 3 murders. But he's
That's serial.
No, it is serial. Yes, you're right.
Super serial.
But he's convicted. I mean, he's suspected of killing 5 people.
Oh.
So, but he didn't get charged with the other 2 murders. So his name is Alejandro Alex Henriquez. So we'll call him Alex Henriquez because that's what he goes by.
The chubster.
He is chubby now. When he did his murders, he wasn't chubby.
Yeah, he thought he was handsome, you could tell.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So just to let you guys know, he was on the documentary on Netflix with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan interviews him.
Terrible job interviewing.
Me
Maybe
and
I'll
Russ
get into it later.
We watched part of the interview. Russ doesn't know the whole story though. So that's why I'm telling him this story about the serial killer. He just knows like details, like bits and pieces of the story.
I guess. I know a little everything.
All right. So Alex Henriquez. So this whole situation takes place in 1988. From 1988 to 1990, it was a very scary time in the Unionport and Castle Hill section of the Bronx. So let me just tell everybody who isn't from the Bronx, who listens, the Bronx is huge. It's really big. It's like the biggest borough, right? In New York City?
I mean, it's the capital of New York City.
No, it's not. Shut up. It's the biggest borough in New York City. It's huge.
I don't know.
And the Bronx, it is. And the Bronx is separated by neighborhoods. So how would you describe the Castle Hill section of the Bronx? Working class, Hispanic neighborhood, right?
I'd say so.
In 1988, it was working class Hispanic neighborhood.
I couldn't ride my bike that far. I was only 7. So I don't know what was really going on then.
True. But we're going to go by...
In the 90s, I used to go, but I used to play football in the bad parts.
But I feel like Castle Hill is not bad, but it's not good. It's like in the middle, I would say.
It's some good people, some bad people, and they make a lot of noise.
Make a lot of noise.
It's always loud music around there. Drove through there today picking Jess up from the ferry, and that music was bumping.
It's true. I take the New York City ferry downtown, and my stop is in Soundview, which is close to the Castle Hill section of the Bronx, and they always have some loud Latin music playing, which is pretty funny. So that's what this neighborhood is like. So 5 Hispanic young people, 4 girls and 1 boy, were murdered all within a 2-year period and within a 2-mile radius of one another. People believe that there was a serial killer on the loose, and all the murders had like a very similar MO. So the people in the community got very outraged, especially after the last one. Do you remember last week when you said in the Bronx, people, especially when people get murdered, people say, "It's not me, Poppy. I live here."
Yeah,
Remember
we mind our business.
Yeah, no, they didn't mind their business. After the last...
Because it was kids.
It's true. She was only 10 years old, the last girl that got murdered. And after her murder, they came together. The community came together. They begged the NYPD to form a task force. 2,000 people came to her funeral.
I think the reason why we get outraged, when it's a kid and not an adult, when it's a kid, we're like, oh, they probably didn't deserve it. They didn't know any better. But when it's adult, we're like, what did he do?
Yeah, that's true. All right, so first I'm going to tell you about the victims, the 5 victims that died in this 2-year period in this 2-mile radius. And then I'm going to tell you about who Alex Henriquez is, and then we're going to go over the evidence against him in his case. Because like I said, he's been maintaining his innocence this entire time, this 28 years that he's been in jail. So the first victim, her name is Shamira Bello. She's a 14-year-old girl. She disappeared on July 2nd, 1988, near East Tremont and Taylor Avenue. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Okay. Her body was discovered the next day in Pelham Bay Park. Pelham Bay Park is literally 5 minutes from us.
All right, that's where David Berkowitz was. That's where my mother's husband now, they used to sit in Pelham Bay Park with shotguns hoping to see David Berkowitz.
Yeah.
So like there's some stuff going on. Pelham Bay Park is the biggest park in New York City, by the way, way bigger than Central Park.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, welcome to the Bronx. We got everything.
We got everything.
Serial killers, big parks, good food.
You're really selling the Bronx to everybody.
Yeah, but don't come here so property values stay at a decent level.
So
rent stays low.
Okay, let's get back on track. So Shamira Bello, 14-year-old girl, her body was found in Pelham Bay Park. And at the time, a lot of bodies. There were actually, in this 1 year alone, in 1988, 40 bodies were found in Pelham Bay Park.
What?
40.
Wow. So not too long after that, when I was like 10 to 12, we would just ride our bike in Pelham Bay Park through like the woods and stuff.
Well, you were young, and thank God nothing happened to you, because this girl, she was only 14 years old.
I was nimble. I would have got her out fast.
Well.
And we rolled deep. We would have jumped them.
Well, this poor girl, 14 years old, her body was found in Pelham Bay Park. There was evidence of sexual assault, which is awful. She was strangled, and the coroner said that she died from repeated blows to the head. Okay, so this is the first victim in this suspected serial killer, Shamira Bello, 14 years old.
Do they think he dropped the body off at Pelham Bay Park, or did he kill her at Pelham Bay Park? Whoever they think it is.
Well, they think he was convicted for her murder. So they think it's Alex Henriquez. They think that he picked her up, killed her, and then dropped her body in Pelham Bay Park.
Okay.
Almost a year later, June 9th, 1989, his second and third victims' bodies were found. 13-year-old Nilda Cartagena and her friend, 15-year-old Heriberto Marrero, they went missing, and their dead bodies were found 12 days later. They died by suffocation, and sadly, both of the bodies were discovered in plastic trash bags near the Whitestone Bridge, which is the bridge that connects Bronx and Queens.
And is now the Trump golf course.
Yeah.
And we used to cut school back there in a place called the Dumps. Hi, Mom. And we would ride our bikes back there often, more than we would cut school. We only cut school a few times back there. And it's right on the water. But yeah.
It's actually nice. You get like a beautiful view of the city back there. But the Dumps had probably some dead bodies back there. Like, aside from this situation, there were probably a bunch of dead bodies. So
we always thought there were dead bodies back there. It's like, oh, this is definitely a place. You could like dump anything back there. There's no roads that led to it. You had to ride your bike in there. Or there were dirt bikes in there and a lot of burnt cars, which were probably just insurance jobs.
And you said before, you told me that there were like all these stray animals, right? Like stray dogs.
Oh, the dump dogs. I forgot about the dump dogs. They would roam through the neighborhoods going through garbage can like packs of dogs.
Wow.
And one time, my friend Reem, he had a little old blind dog, and his dog ran away. And he joined the dump dogs. Aww. Then he came home. They saw him with the dump dogs. I guess the dump dogs didn't eat him, but they would fight the other dogs.
Really?
Yeah, I guess they was like, yo, that's the old OG.
They were like a pack.
Yeah, they didn't mess with Yogi. Yogi was the OG.
Wow. Well, sadly, those two kids, their bodies were discovered in the dumps. I guess that's what it would be called. What your friends and you referred to it as.
Yeah, a.k.a. Ferry Point Park.
Ferry Point Park, yeah. And that's where Trump Golf Course is today. So his fourth victim was actually a little bit older. She was 21 years old. Her name was Lisa Ann Rodriguez. And this was a year later, June 14th, 1990. She vanished from Morrison Avenue, and her body was found 5 days later on the side of the Hutchinson River Parkway. And then lastly, the fifth victim, this was 4 months later, October 17th, 1990. A 10-year-old, which is so sad to me, 10-year-old Jessica Guzman was found strangled in a wooded area along the Bronx River Parkway. So all of these victims lived within a 2-mile radius, lived in the same neighborhood. It was a 2-year span of time, and their bodies were all dumped in a very similar area. Like, this isn't all of these places that we've talked about, if you're not from the Bronx, they're all pretty close together.
Yeah, it's not far. Maybe 10 minutes apart by car.
Yeah. So after Jessica disappeared, that's when the community really came together, like I said before. They banded together, they held vigils, and 2,000 people attended her funeral. They begged the NYPD to hire more police officers and surveil the area. At this point, authorities are convinced that they have a predator or serial killer on the loose. So the 43rd Precinct put together a 40-man task force to find the serial killer responsible for these killings. Because in their mind, there's a trend happening. And if they don't solve, first of all, there's a trend happening and the community is outraged. So they have to get somebody. So they're under a lot of pressure at this point. And I do want you to keep that in mind, that they are under a lot of pressure. But
so they might just be trying to pin the case on someone to quiet the community.
It's true. We do know that historically, cops tend to do that. But I want to give you everything I know and have read about Alex Henriquez, as well as the evidence against him. And then I want to hear your opinion on what you think of it.
They're outraged over these, what was it you said, 5 girls?
It was 4 girls and 1 boy.
Well,
and
the 4 children.
All young.
Or the 4 young people. Mm-hmm. But what about the 40 people in the park that were found? That didn't spark the community?
Well, I think because these kids all lived in the same neighborhood. They all lived within a 2-mile radius of one another. They all knew, everyone. It's a very close community, but 40 dead bodies.
40 is more than 5.
Of course, but 40 dead bodies could have been from all over New York City.
But they knew where the kids were from.
These kids were all from a 2-mile radius of one another. So the community was really starting to freak out. So the cops started questioning everyone. They just scoured the neighborhood and asked tons of questions because they wanted to like get some type of lead. When they first met Alejandro Henriquez, they didn't find him really suspicious, but there were a couple comments that he made that gave them a little bit of a weird vibe. And eventually, after questioning him a few times, they started suspecting him. So let me tell you a little bit about Alex Henriquez. He was a 31-year-old Hispanic man living in the Bronx. He owned a car service. So before there was Uber, there were either the yellow cabs, which had a meter in them, or there were car services that you would call, right?
Yeah, there was car services. Usually Spanish dudes drove the Lincolns. All the car services were pretty much Spanish guys. And you could either hail them down or you can call like a little number on a card. They would like stick things in your buildings. Yeah, you'd see like little things. And whenever you called, no matter how long they were coming, you'd say, hey, I'm at so-and-so. They say, Cinco Minuto, Cinco Minuto. Cinco Minuto means 5 to 15 minutes. And if they don't show up, you call again. You're like, hey, my cab's not here. And they're like, Cinco Minuto.
That's so true.
It's just true.
So Alex owned one of those car services. Actually, we have a car service here in the Bronx. It's probably out of business now. And the dispatcher for that car service...
Oh, that wasn't Cinco Minuto. That was a nasty old lady.
Yeah, she was a nasty old lady. And every time you would call, she would say, car service! Like she smoked for the last 70 years. It was pretty funny. But now they've since closed down.
Uber did it. Yeah.
So yeah, Uber closed all these car services.
They're the Walmart of cab companies that put everyone out of business.
They are, yeah. That's so true. So Alex owned this cab company, and that means that everybody in the community really knew him. A lot of people were familiar with him. They used his cab service. He was married with 2 daughters. He lived right in Castle Hill, and his parents, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, extended family, they all lived in Castle Hill. So he was very well known in the community. So at first, like I said, when the cops started questioning him, they didn't really suspect him. But then he started making these really kind of off-the-wall comments that made cops think twice. So the first thing that kind of threw them off was he became really preoccupied with the poster that they had hanging up about Jessica Guzman. They had her face on it, and on it, it was a reward for any information about the disappearance of Jessica. And on there, it said that her last known whereabouts were Homer Avenue. And he seemed super preoccupied and weirded out by this. And come to find out later, it's because he was the one last seen with her on Homer Avenue.
Dun, dun, dun.
So that really made cops suspect a little bit something else was going on because he was so worried about this poster saying that she was last seen on Homer Avenue.
Something's fishy.
Definitely fishy. And then the other thing that was super weird that he said was he asked them a bunch of questions about the effectiveness of the bloodhounds sniffing, the dogs, the tracking dogs or whatever, sniffing in the area. And he was asking them all these questions about it, like their effectiveness. Are they really effective? Do they really work? Blah, blah, blah. And cops were a little thrown off by that too. Like, why are you so interested in the fact that they are if they work or not?
I don't think that might just be a coincidence, or he might be asking that because he killed someone, but that could also be a concerned citizen hoping that these dogs can actually find the killer.
It could be, except that a couple weeks later, they found out through interviewing other people that he asked one of his friends to follow the dog and report back to him exactly what the dog found, which to me is weird.
Fishy.
I don't know. That's weird AF to me. So after these 2 instances, it didn't sit right with cops, and they decided to dive a little deeper into who Alex Henriquez is. They looked into his past, his relationships, etc. So police spoke to some of the teens in the area, and apparently Alex told them that he is actually an undercover federal narcotics agent. And he would drive up on the sidewalk and let all the little kids play in his car. And then he told a bunch of the teen boys, like he would brag to these teen boys about the girls that he was hooking up with on the side, because he was married, but he was cheating on his wife with a bunch of young girls.
He seems like he's just a try hard, trying to be cool. So
He definitely seems like that. Like a tryhard. He was just making up lies to try to look cool for these teenagers.
Yeah, he's just a chubby tryhard.
So he visited that part of the neighborhood, like right in Castle Hill, on Homer Avenue daily. He was there every single day. And there was a lot of teens that used to hang out on their stoop and on the block, and they would see him on this street every single day. But then after Jessica went missing, he totally stopped coming around. And that's something that that the police said that the teens mentioned to them. That, you know, up until this girl went missing, we saw him every day. And then all of a sudden, after she's gone, we never see him anymore. Which the teenage guys felt was really weird. Two of the teenage boys that he used to brag to all the time said that the last time they saw him was at Jessica's vigil. And they said that he was acting really nervous at the vigil, and that he kept looking back at them in kind of a nervous way. And that's something that the boys mentioned to cops on their own, and they just found it really weird. So he was the type of guy that had few male friends, but was a super player. He messed around with girls all the time. He had a lot of girlfriends, and he would use his girlfriends' names to get credit cards. So he was a scammer. He would take these girls that he started dating, he would take their names and their social security numbers. He would open up credit cards in their name. Then he used the credit cards to rent cars from LaGuardia Airport, and then he would sublease the cars to cab drivers.
Wow, he's making a lot of money.
He was making $450 a day, 7 days a week off of this scam. And this was
That's not that much. I thought it was more.
Yeah, but in 1988, $450 a day was a decent amount of money with none of his credit. Like, it was all these girls' credits that he was using. He never paid them back. Most of them didn't know he was opening credit cards in their name. So he was a scammer.
What would he do? Be like, hey, my name's... I forgot his name. What was it?
Alex.
My name's Alex. Let's hang out. And then while they're hanging out, what's your social security number, by the way?
I don't know. He would probably be dating them for a short amount of time and then either find their social. I don't know how he would do it, but he would end up getting their information, enough information to open credit cards in their name.
Okay.
So while getting more info on him, they realized that his wife worked for the World Yacht Club in Manhattan, and $20,000 was stolen from the World Yacht Club in 1987. So what the cops decided to do, because they were really suspecting him, but they couldn't hold him and interrogate him because they didn't have anything to charge him with. So what they did was they used this World Yacht Club robbery. They charged him with it because his wife worked there. The $20,000 went missing, and then a couple days later, he bought a brand new motorcycle. So they used that as evidence to charge him with this robbery in order to get him into an interrogation room and question him about the murders. They just needed to hold him without him being able to leave, pretty much.
It's a little shady.
Hey, I mean, they needed to get him in a situation where he wasn't allowed to leave and they could question him. So while in custody, they turned up some evidence in New Jersey, and they issued an arrest warrant for charges of sexual abuse against one of his girlfriend's 6-year-old daughter. So there's all these little things. Like, my way of thinking is, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, yeah, some things are coincidental. Whatever.
I've been on Homer Avenue. It wasn't me. I mean, if you look hard enough, you could find a reason for anyone to have been guilty of something.
But this is like one thing after another with this guy. You have the...
Oh, he's a scammer.
The scamming, the stealing credit card information. You have this robbery of the yacht club, and then he buys a brand new motorcycle a couple days later.
Yeah, but he's making, like you said, he's making $450 a week. That could be from his original scam.
100%.
Motorcycles aren't that much money.
100%. You have the other things that people have said about him. You have the random weird comments that he made in his initial questioning, and now you have an ex-girlfriend of him claiming that he sexually abused her 6-year-old daughter.
Well, right there, put him in jail. But so far, to me, it's not enough evidence to convict him of killing these girls.
Okay. Well, let me give you some more info. So a few years before he was charged with this whole with the robbery and police were suspecting him of these murders, he was actually charged with another crime. He was charged with scalding a 3-year-old little boy who was his ex-girlfriend's son. Because, he had a lot of girlfriends. So this was another ex-girlfriend.
What's scolding?
Scalding is when they're burned with hot water.
I thought you meant like whooping them.
No, scalding, like hot water. Okay. So he was burned with hot water. He has scars all over his back. And he was charged with that and throwing the 3-year-old boy down the stairs.
Well, either way, even if he didn't kill these girls, put them in. Book them, Dano.
Well, listen. So he claims that the burns were an accident, of course. And he took a plea. He pled guilty to a lesser assault charge. He didn't mention anything about throwing the kid down the stairs, but that's what the claim was from the mom. So he was convicted of a felony for this. And this was like in 1983. So this was a few years beforehand. But it's just another thing that adds to the list of the, crazy shit that this guy does. So I'm going to tell you the evidence against him in this particular case. So the thing about Alex that made him super suspicious is that he's linked to each and every victim in a certain way. So I'm going to tell you all the evidence against him, and I want to hear your opinion after that.
Okay.
So he was tied to each victim, like I said. He and Lisa Ann Rodriguez, which is the 21-year-old girl that was found, I think she was the 4th victim out of the 5. He and her were dating, and her body was found near the Bronx River Parkway, I think it was, or the Hutchinson River Parkway. But she was found wearing his wife's pink sweatpants. So the day she went missing, the two of them were standing together in front of his house. And his landlady said hello, and she introduced herself. He introduced Lisa as his niece. And the landlady didn't think anything of it.
That's what cheating guys do.
Yeah, she didn't think anything of it because she's a young girl. He's 30, she's 21. She's like, oh, yeah, it's probably his niece, whatever. Didn't think anything of it. But he said they were waiting for her to catch a cab. And the landlady found that a little weird because she's like, you're a cab. So what do you mean you're waiting? Like, why don't you just drive her home since you're a cab?
Nah, maybe he didn't want to drive her home. He was calling a cab to take her home.
Maybe.
That makes sense to me.
But apparently they never left and she never got in a cab. The landlady kind of was a little weirded out by that comment and stuck around to see what happened. And she never got in a cab and left. And this was the last known whereabouts of Lisa Rodriguez. A couple days later, her body was found. And like I said, she was wearing Alex's wife's pink sweatpants. So that's...
Now, if he killed her, do you think he was that dumb where he would leave the sweatpants of his wife on her?
He did. He even admits that it's his wife's sweatpants. He says it is his wife's sweatpants.
But now, if he was going to kill her, wouldn't he be like, I got to get these off?
That's what he says. So he claims that they were having sex and she needed a new pair of pants for some reason or whatever. I think they went to the beach or something. He claims they went to the beach and her pants were all oily and sandy. So after they came back from the beach, he ran in his house and grabbed a pair of pink sweatpants to give her. And then a couple days later, she was found dead in the sweatpants. And whatever happened to her happened after she left his presence. That's what he claims.
Well, if he killed her and left those sweatpants on her, he's a really dumb criminal. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, let me tell you how he's tied to the other victim. So the second victim, Nilda Cartagena, he wasn't convicted for this crime. Like, they didn't convict him for the murders of the boy and the girl that were found on the side of the Whitestone Bridge. But Nilda was his actual niece, his real niece. And the boy and girl who were suffocated and found in the plastic bags, they couldn't tie it to him because they didn't have the proof, but he intimately knows this little girl. That's his niece. So he's tied to that one too. But like I said, he didn't get convicted for that because the cops they didn't have any proof that he did it.
Still not enough. Knowing someone and them being found dead isn't enough to say you killed them.
Okay. Well, that's true. All right, so let's keep going.
Like, I know people that have died, and I didn't shoot them.
Of course not. But when you are tied in some way to 5 young victims from the same neighborhood, like, it's a little weird. All right, so 14-year-old Shamira Bello, she was the first victim, right? And she was one of his nephew's girlfriends. Police testified during the trial that 3 strands of Alex's hair was found on Bello's body. And a witness testified that Alex told his nephew that he wanted to have sex with her.
All right.
Okay. And then lastly, with regards to Jessica Guzman, he was the last person seen with her on Homer Avenue. In addition to that, there were 2 specific details he mentioned during the interrogation that only the killer would know. He talked about how Jessica had a tear in the front of her training bra. I don't have the transcripts, and I couldn't find the transcripts of the actual interrogation. I wish I could have. But during the interrogation, he mentioned that she had a tear in the front of her training bra, and then he also described the floral print of her underwear.
Well, that's it then. If he really said that and they have that recorded, then he did it.
And that was before police had even seen the underwear. So he had mentioned something about her underwear, and while they were talking to him during this long interrogation process, and then later the cops saw the underwear and they were like, oh, it matches exactly how he described them.
But the evidence for the other people aren't enough. Maybe he might be getting charged for murders that he didn't do to satisfy the public.
Well, here's the thing. Well, okay,
but he's still a terrible person. Like, he burnt the kid and all that. So charge him for everything, lock him up, and let's get rid of this lowlife in the community.
Yeah.
So either way.
So the last piece of evidence against him, because all of this is circumstantial evidence. Like, they didn't have any hard evidence besides the hair. They did have his hair on one of the bodies, which was pretty decent evidence. But they didn't have actual DNA. So the last piece of circumstantial evidence that they had was that his nephew testified that Alex tried to coax him into pretending that he was the killer. He told his nephew, call the cops, use a fake voice, and pretend to be the killer in order to get the attention off of me. He gave him a script that he handwrote, and the nephew brought the script to the trial that he handwrote. And he told the nephew exactly what to say during this fake phone call.
What was his reason when they asked this guy, why did you tell your nephew to say that?
He says, because all the attention was on me and I felt like I was getting wrongfully accused and I wanted the attention off of me.
That's what I thought he would say.
Exactly.
But so, it kind of makes sense.
It makes sense. So when you watched you watched part of the serial killer Piers Morgan interview.
Worst interview ever. Well, first of all, when you watch that, go on Netflix. I don't know what it's called. It's on the serial killer.
It's called Serial Killer.
There you go. Piers Morgan,
yeah.
Worst interview of all time. He wouldn't get anything out of this guy. He went in there straight accusing him, calling him names, and telling him, I don't like you. So you're not going to get anything out of that. Piers Morgan, if you ever hear this, hit up Russ the Profiler, and I'll give you a few tips on how to get these guys to like you. So I could have gave you, like, tell him, you were a ladies' man, stroke his ego a little bit, something.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't. He totally accused him the whole time of it.
Piers Morgan, hit up Russ the Profiler.
And he called him a liar.
A liar. He was accusing instead of asking questions and letting this guy kind of hang himself a little or let him say something fishy. So right from the beginning, Senor Chubby was right on the defense.
He was definitely right on the defense. So he, like I said, has maintained his innocence for 28 years. And this Piers Morgan interview for the show The Serial Killer, it was the first interview that he's done since he went to jail.
Oh, that's even worse then. Someone else could have got something out of him.
Yeah. So the problem was when Piers Morgan went into this interview, he listened to the investigators, the cops that, the 2 detectives that were the head of this investigation said to Piers Morgan, he's very manipulative. He's going to tell you anything that you want to hear. He's going to try to twist this whole thing and make him seem like the innocent one. So Piers Morgan went into it expecting him to be a liar and didn't think tactfully how to interview a guy like him.
Because what does Piers Morgan do besides? Is he an interviewer? What's his job?
Yeah, he's like a reporter. He's an investigative news reporter.
Well, report what you normally report on, because you ain't good at that.
True. So, after 6-week trial, he was convicted of 3 of the murders. Shamira Bello, which is the 14-year-old girl who they found his hair on. So he was convicted of that one.
That's kind of enough.
He was convicted of Lisa Rodriguez's murder, which is the girl in the pink sweatpants. Yeah. And then he was convicted of Jessica Guzman's murder, which was the girl that he was last seen with her. He was sentenced to 75 years, and he's currently at Sullivan Correctional upstate. So when you watch videos of the trial, the families all stand up and they make their statement. Like, in most trials, they make their statement for the judge. And as the families are talking, he refuses to look at them. He's just completely looking straight ahead. He's showing no emotion. He doesn't seem remorseful whatsoever. Or
if you're saying you didn't do it, you wouldn't try to seem remorseful.
Yeah, that's true. So what do you think then, Mr. Russ the Profiler? Do you think that...
I think he did it.
Okay. Why do you think he did it?
Because he knew the girl had some flower panties on and a ripped bra right there. I mean, who else would know that?
It's true. I feel like...
But sorry, I interrupted you, but the one with the sweatpants, you're the stupidest killer alive, though. Like, do we think he's that dumb to kill her and not take off his wife's sweatpants? He has no regards for the body. Yank the sweatpants off.
That's a good point. I just feel like in all these situations where these people claim innocence, like there's some situations where I believe they really are innocent and they're wrongfully convicted, and I'm all about the wrongful conviction cases. I love the podcast Wrongful Conviction. I'm all about it. But when you have this many bad things that you've done and this many, it's just not a coincidence to me that all these things just keep happening to you. You have to play a part.
Either way, he's not a good person, so I don't care. Lock him up.
True. But I do believe when you watch him in the interview, I kind of do get a vibe of this arrogant, like kind of a jerk who thinks he's smarter and better than everybody.
Yeah, he definitely thinks he's smart, and he's like very arrogant. And he's telling you almost what you should think. Yeah,
he's definitely like that, which gives me this idea that he's probably a sociopath.
Sociopath doesn't make you a killer. Being arrogant doesn't make you a killer.
Sociopath can most of the time make you kill somebody because you don't have any regard for human emotion whatsoever.
But I think that dude would be able to kill someone and justify it in his head that it was no big deal and they deserved it.
So then he probably did it.
Yeah, he probably did it.
So that was the story of Alex Henriquez, the other Bronx serial killer. And it happened super close to home, just like the last one. I mean, it's literally a 10-minute drive away. And it happened in the 80s. And after he was put in jail, none of these murders happened anymore. And to me,
no way. There was still more murders in the 80s.
No, but not of young Hispanic children in a 2-mile radius with the same type of killing.
Wow.
They all were suffocated. They all were strangled or asphyxiated in some way. And their bodies were all disposed in random places in the Bronx. That stopped. So the same MO didn't happen anymore after he was put away. So, what does that tell you?
Guilty, but I thought he was guilty before that.
I don't know. You seem to take up for him a little bit.
No, I didn't.
Kind of. You kept saying, well, that doesn't mean that, and that doesn't mean that.
Yeah,
you were doing the benefit of the doubt.
Some stuff is circumstantial. So I've been on Homer Avenue, and if someone died on Homer Avenue, doesn't mean I killed him.
It's true, but were you on Homer Avenue last seen with the little girl that died on Homer Avenue?
No, Russ don't like kids. When they come next to me, I walk the other way.
You're so full of it. All right, so that's this week's episode, peeps. Check out wifeofcrime.com for extra content. I'll put up pictures of Alex when he was younger and during the trial and the pictures of the victims. And check out Wife of Crime Pod for all my funny memes.
Yeah, check out that Netflix show and let us know what you think, too. I'm kind of curious. At Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Yeah, comment on the post and let us know what you think. I think that you were right. The interview sucked and Pierce Morgan did a terrible job. 100%.
And if you could think of any funny names to make fun of the fat dude killer, tell us those too.
All right, everybody, have a good week. See you later.
Peace.
Bye.